Good evening. A man once asked me if I knew the way to hell. I told him with good intentions. He then asked if I knew where to find the devil, and I told him to start his search in the mirror. That is what our story is about tonight. It is a tale known as The Devil of Mayvell Ranch.
The world is a simple place when one is 5 years old, more so when one leads a simple life. A life such as little Abby Mayvell. She lived on her family's ranch in Outpost, Wyoming. Her days were spent talking to the animals or carrying tools for her father or cooking with her mother. But her favorite thing was to visit her friend, the monster of the cave. At least that's what she called them. Truth is, she didn't know what it was. The grown-ups all said that it was just a cave that possibly led into an underground river. Of course, she wasn't going to enter the cave. There was a monster down there. Still, she would visit the cave and yell to the monster far within. She knew it was there, and that it hurt her because she could hear it moving and splashing around deep in the darkness. It was in the summer of 1974. Abby was excited because she found out that she would be starting school. So, of course, she raced out across the farm to the cave to tell the monster all about it. She wondered if monsters go to school, but she never got the chance to ask. Several yards from where the cave was, she found men building a fence. Just past the fence, she could see a big tent being put up. It must have been some kind of a fair or circus. She thought that it was odd to put such a thing on top of a cave where a monster lived. She wondered if the monster would leave the cave to see it. The men putting up the fence were nice enough, though, telling her that she needed to keep back while they worked. That was when she saw a man in a black suit. Maybe this was his fair. That had to be it. He must be the ringmaster. He was putting up a sign on the fence, and that was when she saw something she didn't like. The sign had a long word that she didn't recognize, and an odd picture on it. A blue circle with 4 yellow arrows pointing outward. She didn't like it. It reminded her of a time when she saw a snake in the field. It frightened her, even though she didn't know why. Her father told her that it was an instinct. Sometimes you just know when something is dangerous or bad. The ringmaster turned towards her. "Oh, well, aren't you just a cute little thing? What's a tree like you doing out here by yourself?" Abby didn't like the ringmaster. His eyes, they frightened her. They looked like how her family's dogs' eyes looked when they were begging at the table, waiting for a scrap of food to fall on the ground. She stepped back away from him, and he took one large step towards her. That was when she heard another man shout, "Lawrence." Just like this Lawrence person, this new man was wearing a suit as well, though he looked much older. The two of them grumbled at each other, and finally Lawrence walked away. Abby looked up at the old man, and honestly, he looked even more frightening than Lawrence did. He told her that she needed to leave, and that this property was off limits to little girls. She didn't know what else to do, so she turned and ran. When she got back to her home and told her parents what had happened, her father seemed very upset. They spoke for a while and finally told her to stay away from the area she had seen the fence going up. And the next day, her father went to the fence himself. He was gone almost the entire day. It was almost sundown when Lawrence and 2 other men dragged him back to their front porch and left him there like a sack of potatoes. That night, Abby had a hard time sleeping. She wasn't worried so much about her father. He said he was all right. But he did emphasize again that she was not allowed to go near that fence any more. No, the reason she couldn't sleep was she kept thinking about the monster in the cave, and those bad men in the suits. It took hours of laying in bed for her to finally fall asleep, but when she did, her dreams were filled with smoke and yelling. It seemed as if she was out in the field, near the cave, but everything was wrong. She saw strange, marshmallow-like people spraying an ugly yellow smoke. She could hear the animals of the farm making noise, and then she was able to hear the monster in the cave, too. She was afraid. Afraid for the animals, afraid for the monster. She turned to run away, but that was when she saw him. A creature more frightening than anything she had ever seen before. A devil. Dark red skin, dressed in a black suit looming over her, glaring down with a single hate-filled eye. The devil reached for her, but suddenly there was a sound of a horse. Both Abby and the devil looked up and saw was a knight in shining black armor, riding a powerful red horse. He wore a crown on top of his helmet and carried a large white shield which had an odd black set of rings painted on it. Seeing this beautiful being, the devil screeched and fled into the yellow smoke. The knight rode up to Abby and looked down at her. But that's when she suddenly woke up. A sound from the real world had pulled her out of the dream. She trembled in her bed. It was the sound of the yelling from her dream. And she suddenly remembered seeing and hearing the animals and that nasty yellow smoke. She wished that the knight would show up. He seemed so frightening, but also not scary at all in a way. That was when she remembered the monster being attacked in the dream. Her mother and father were standing on the front porch, looking out towards the field. So Abby slipped out the back door and made her way towards the cave. She could see a bright glow coming from where the big tent had been put up. But when she got to the fence, she could see those strange marshmallow people from the dream, spraying that disgusting yellow smoke everywhere. She heard a horrific roar and could see large black tentacles swaying up from the smoke and large bat-like wings trying to flap. The monster was out of the cave and trying to escape. They were hurting it. She screamed at them to stop, but over all the noise it seemed that no one could hear her. Suddenly, something grabbed her by the back of the shirt collar and pulled her off the ground. It turned her around, and she came face to face with Lawrence once again, still looking at her like a piece of meat. "Well, hi there, you little treat." He grinned and then licked the side of her face. She screamed, and some impulse deep inside her mind took action. She had to get out of this man's grip. She swung out her arms, trying to dig her fingers into his face, and all at once she fell to the ground, hitting her head. Everything hurt. There was a loud ringing in her ears, and everything was blurry for a moment. The world slowly came back into focus, though, and when it did, she saw him again. That hideous, one-eyed red devil. "You goddamn little bitch! What the hell did you do to me?" The devil reached for her as 2 marshmallow men came running up. "Mr. Brawley, sir, it's down. We've got it ready for transport. We're not sure if it'll survive the gas, though." Lawrence turned to them, and they both gasped in horror. "Good God, sir! What happened to your face? Your eye?" "Shut the hell up. The monster's Oscar's problem now. Just get it on the goddamn road to Peaksport already, and grab the girl!" Abby turned and ran for her house. She could hear the strange creatures behind her yelling for her to stop. They were closing in, and suddenly there was a loud bang, Abby fell again, but this time when she looked up, she saw her mother and father carrying shotguns. Both aimed, and the two marshmallow men suddenly turned and ran away. After that, Abby passed out. She woke in her bed the next morning. She could hear her parents talking to people outside of her room. She couldn't make out what was being said, but after a few moments her mother poked her head in the room and shouted that she was awake. Abby's mother, father, and a doctor from town all rushed into the room. They asked her what had happened that night, and she told them everything. She told them about the monster, the yellow smoke, and that one-eyed devil named Lawrence. But the doctor seemed only interested in the yellow smoke. After that, she had to go to the doctor's office several times in a row. The doctor explained that what she called yellow smoke was some kind of a poison. Thankfully, she didn't breathe too much of it in, so she would recover. Unfortunately, the same could not be said for much of the animals on the farm. About a week later, a large man with a red suit came to the ranch. He introduced himself as Kevin, and said that he was from a legal firm which was pursuing something he called the Encompass investment firm. Abby's father was very angry. He said he wanted Brawley's head on a rope. She'd never seen him so angry. Kevin spoke with each of the family members alone that day. When he spoke to Abby, he asked her to tell him about that night, and specifically the monster in the cave. She was excited because no one else had even believed her or questioned about the monster. That was when she remembered that Lawrence had mentioned something about getting the monster to an Oscar and Peaksport. Kevin made note of that, and Abby asked if she could save the monster, if they really knew someone that could help. Kevin looked down at a piece of paper and nodded. Abby asked if she could see the paper, and Kevin handed it to her. But she didn't understand. All that was on it was a picture of a scary-looking flower.
Donect itorum convenient.